Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2, where this design is getting increasingly unhinged. I love it. We're going to put this out on the pad and I'm going to see how this goes. Now, I did run a test of the last one and it was fine. We were able to control it, it didn't flip, but it didn't get us as much further as I thought it would without the flip. So, as you can see, we've made some changes to these outside bits. And we'll see how that goes. I'm not 100% convinced that this is going to go well. We might break our struts here. Let's see what happens. Okay, so this is going to be interesting. So here we are falling down. We'll see if anything breaks here. It didn't immediately. Are we still sinking is the next question. I think the answer to this is yes, we are. Okay, so sinking is a bit of a problem. And let's just start trying to go as up as we can for right now. So we're going to need to pitch this downward a bit, of course. And we've already lost one set of our boosters. Those, of course, burn off extraordinarily quickly. Okay. This is wanting to flop all the way over, which is, of course, not necessarily what we want it to be doing. Oh, this is behaving very excitingly. Okay. So that's noted. This is not controlling nearly as well as the previous prototype. Now, I have to assume that some of this is because we did not start from a horizontal position. So there's probably some of that going on here, and we were sinking as well, which is a bit of an issue, to be sure. We are not currently in the air, though. We're just kind of bobbing around over here, and that is certainly not ideal given what we've got going on here. So I think that the weight of these, I think these Mammoth 2s are not currently pulling their weight. Pretty sure that's what we've got going on here. Which is interesting, because I expected us to be airborne at this point. Okay, so we're just kind of lacking a little bit of lift, it seems, with this out here. So it seems like we've hit a weight limit at this point. That is interesting to note. To be sure. I'm wondering if we change our distribution here. Ah, hello. Do we have enough thrust now to actually do this? We have 11-meter altitude at this point. We're now beginning to overcome the gravity. Okay. So that's noted. That was quite a lot that we needed to do there. So I'm thinking about reversing our fuel flow out of these big tanks and keeping around those other engines longer. Let's just park it here for now and see where this design gets us. But we know for a fact that this is going to require some revision. No doubt about that. I'm just parking it here for the time being. And we'll see how long our burn time is here. We're definitely gaining surface speed. So once we took off, this is pretty decent. But it took a huge amount of our fuel just to take off. So I'm thinking right now about reversing the fuel flow, having these pull out there, and just have these detach, like, from the outside in, instead of going out and then in. That might be what we end up doing here, so that everything is pulling from these big tanks at the beginning. So that's definitely noted. And that would mean that we hold those vectors for much, much longer, which should also, in theory, mean that our overall thrust is significantly higher during this portion. So that's very interesting for sure. We're not very high off the ground right now, and this is due to how long it took us to get out of the drink there. That's for sure. But we'll punch up through the atmosphere as up as we can anyway, and we're going to be ditching these mammoths very shortly. So that's going to be a lot of weight going away. And I'm not sure exactly, I don't think we built up enough speed to really justify this at this point. We do have some speed, for sure. So we'll ditch those mammoths. Our speed is still increasing at this point. 8 seconds to Apoapsis is the best amount of momentum that we've seen built up yet. This is interesting. This is definitely very interesting. That seems like it's a reasonable upgrade, especially... Ooh, that could have broken the wings there, but it didn't. Especially if we make some changes to how our thrust is done here, I think. We're still increasing our velocity at this moment, so that looks good. Our apoapsis is crossing 6 kilometers here. Now, I think we can get a fair amount more out of that. Yeah, I suspect that we can. I may want to move our wings a bit forward, but let's get rid of these vectors. Okay. Those are some very awkward detachments there. We're losing some airspeed at this point. I see 9 seconds to apoapsis. Okay. Airspeed is still going down, but it's about to reverse here. Okay, airspeed is going back up at this point. We're back up to 9 seconds to apoapsis. This is an interesting test. I think that there's definitely some room for improvement in the way that the fuel draws. No doubt about that. We could have maintained a higher thrust for longer. Okay. Those are some very awkward detachments. I'm seeing an apoapsis of 10 kilometers. Now, our airspeed is dropping right now, and that is absolutely understood. Time to apoapsis is going down, and we are going to be seeing fairly soon our nose start to pitch down. That is relatively fine. Hang on. I think we're going to flip around our velocities again. Yeah, we're very close to being out of fuel on these vectors, though, so we're not going to rebuild too much of that airspeed. But that is very interesting, for sure. So we're seeing about 12.5 kilometers. Now 13 kilometers altitude. Our vectors are about to go away, though. So this is our last set of vectors. Goodbye. And we're nosing down here. Yeah, we're losing a lot of airspeed, so let's just nose it on down until we're losing a little less airspeed. These aerospike engines are not, they're not really particularly capable of generating too much altitude on their own. They're kind of intended to coast and also, let's try to nose up a little bit. They're intended to coast and just get us that last little bit of distance, so I'd like to sit them somewhere around here or so. So they will get us a little bit of additional altitude, but that is a big, big boost. Up to around 15 kilometers, starting the burn on our aerospikes. Now, it's going to take some time for these aerospikes to build up some additional altitude, and I'm not too concerned about them actually doing that, to be clear. But this is definitely an interesting setup. So, a couple of problems. Let's bring this back to the VAB. Problem number 1, we sink. I don't know how much of a problem that really is. Problem number 2. We certainly have, I mean, it's a bit of a problem. All we have to do, though, is land on Eve and return, right? So, in theory, that's reasonably fine. Problem number 2, before we took off, we lost the thrust from all of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and remove every single one of these fuel lines. Like so. And we're going to invert the directionality of them. If I can grab this one. There we go. This one doesn't want to be gotten rid of. Apparently it attached there. Okay, sure. Now it'll get rid of it. And this one is in a similar scenario. It doesn't want to be gotten rid of, I guess, from that side? From any side. Attach it there, and then get rid of it? No, this one doesn't want to get deleted. Okay, well, I guess we'll just have to make sure it's going correctly. Which way is this going? This actually won't connect to anything now. Amazing. Okay. I'm not sure what we can do about this. This is broken at this point. Wonderful. Excellent. KSP2 is such a finished game. No doubt about it. Well, that's broken, and it's not actually connected to anything. Let's save this. And then let's exit the VAB and go back in. So let's go to the KSC and then back into the VAB. This fixed an issue I was having earlier where I was unable to attach the nose cones. So hopefully this will do the trick. Okay. I don't... Here it is. It's just kind of broken. I mean, that's normal. No, it will not allow us to delete this. Amazing. It also won't allow us to attach it to anything. Also in the category of amazing. Okay, so at this point, what I want to do is I want to, and yes, I know that this is free floating. It seems actually fine. What I want to do at this point is I want to make sure that this is flowing out this way. This is the opposite direction of fuel flow from what we had previously. So it's just going to be something kind of like this. Now, in terms of the timing on these, I have no idea what this timing is going to look like. Also, I really wish I could get rid of this fuel line. It's very obnoxious. Wait a second, it just deleted. It actually deleted. Okay, good. So, let's save this. And the reason why I don't know what the fuel flow here is going to look like in terms of timing for detaching these is because these are slightly different. We've got the two aerospike engines down here, and we don't have those here. Although maybe we should. We could make these be the same, make these also be aerospike engines. That's not what I wanted to grab at all. I'm just going to reload it. Because we know that if I undo that, it likely will break all of our struts and fuel flow, which I do not want. Okay, we don't have fuel flow here, it looks like. We should definitely have that. So it would be that, and then we would get rid of this and this. And I was talking about putting in a pair of aerospike engines up top, like this. So that now these will all be detaching in theory, anyway, at exactly the same speed. Okay, so we're going to move all of these together like so. And then these should be going from the outside in now. So this one is here. Then this one goes here. Then this one goes here. Come on. Anytime the game wants to catch up, that would be great. We've got some order issues here. So this guy is going to go, like, up here. Okay. Well, that's not ideal. Why are you here? You go up here. Not there, though. You go here. KSP2 is a very complete game. There's no doubt about that. Okay, so we've got those set up-ish. We need this guy to be moved down, I believe, to here. Yes. And then this one is going to end up being the first one that we get rid of under this fuel doctrine. So, there we go. I'm going to save this. I see that screenshot worked very well. Excellent. And we're going to put this out on the pad, and we'll test it with this fuel flow. So that'll be interesting for sure. I'm not... What do we got here? 0.77? Okay. So 0.77 thrust to weight is likely enough to get us to take off. Likely. One question. Would we be better off with the Mammoth 2s, or would we be better off running multiple vectors on that? 4250 with a 270. We'd have a better specific impulse on the vectors. We'd have slightly lower max thrust. Unless we ran more than 4. What if we ran like 5? Right. They don't call it engine plates in this. I think we can just search for EP. We've got the quad adapter here, but that's not what I'm looking for specifically. I believe I remember seeing engine plates in this. Engine mounts is what they call it. Yeah. So a multi-engine mount. So we could remove this guy, and we could put that in here. And how many engine mounts is that in KSP2? We're about to find out. Currently, it's 1. That's not a multi-engine mount at all. How do we operate this? It must be like this? No? Okay. How do we access this? Maybe it goes on this way? No. Maybe this is incomplete. Because we've only got the one attachment point here. And that's definitely not ideal. So the MEM 375 here, it has a length, an ejection force, a deploy type, and fairing enabled. Those are the only options. So I don't think this is really very functional, or I just don't understand how to use it. So for now, we're just going to keep the Mammoth 2s here. Okay. So that will do for the moment. Let's save this again, and let's give this a test. And this is going to be retaining higher levels of thrust for longer. So the question is, can we keep it from bobbing around the way it was? Well, I want to take a quick peek at our center of pressure versus center of mass. Yeah, I think we're just a little too close together, and that's why it was doing that. It's not particularly controllable. We'd like this to be a little further back. So we'd like the center of mass to be a little further forward. And we could do that by moving this guy further forward. It's already technically detached, though. Let's see what this feels like. So we're going to put this out on Eve. Okay, and I'm going to put this at, like, instead of 425, I'm going to put it at 400. Cool. So the sinking problem is definitely a problem. And I would like to figure out what we want to do about that. But let's go ahead and launch these engines right now. And it's trying to nose up. That is understood. I don't want to nose up quite this much. So I want to bring us back down and try to put it about, not quite here. We're going to need a little bit more speed before our lift is going to lift us up. Yeah, we get a lot of nose up pressure from the explodium here. So the actual liftoff with this amount of mass is rough. No doubt about it. Huge amounts of nose up pressure, and then we have a hard time holding that actual attitude due to our low airspeed. So that is understood, and now we're getting nose down pressure. But we should lift off very, very shortly here. Yeah, we're struggling with this amount of mass. So I think we need to down mass this somehow. The question is, how do we want to go about doing that? We haven't lifted this guy off yet, right? So our thrust to weight is just a little bit too low for this, and this is what I'm saying when I say that the Mammoth 2s, they're underpowered in KSP2. A Mammoth 2 is really not even powerful enough to lift this fuel that it's running on. It's really not great. Now we are flying, though, and that did take us a huge amount of fuel to lift off. This is because our mass is straight up too high. No way around it. So I'd like to get a good amount of vertical speed here. We're going to try to push up as much as we can before we run out of fuel. And we'll see when this engine runs out of fuel. But yeah, let's just pick up as much momentum as we can. But clearly our amount of lift is not high enough for our amount of mass here. Or you could just make the argument that our thrust to weight is too low. That is the other option that you could make that argument, for sure. Okay, so we're gonna ditch these mammoths, and that of course means that we are about 1 kilometer off the ground, but I'd definitely like to get further on those mammoths. But let's see where this takes us when we're running this thrust for longer. Oh, we're going to have some pretty major detachment issues. I just realized. Yeah, this is not going to work very well. Because we're going to be able to detach these guys, no problem. But the next stage is not actually these. So we would need to decouple these manually. Like that. It's only mildly awkward. Okay. So our staging is broken. That is understood. We can still see approximately how far this will bring us. But the main issue right now is, like I said, we just do not have the thrust to lift ourselves up off of the ocean. So my question is, do we need the aerospike engines at all? It's an interesting question, to be sure. So let's ditch these, but also we're going to need to ditch these, and our staging is currently wrong for that, so we have to do this manually. Ooh, I just saw some explosions there. Bad detach? Possibly. Okay. So for the moment, we're relatively okay. Yeah, we lost this engine. That was indeed a bad detach. Okay. Well, we'll do what we can here. Losing that engine is, of course, very non-ideal. Honestly, we should probably just revert this at this point. And I am definitely wondering, is there a point to having the aerospike engines at this point? We need more thrust, and vectors would provide that. Vectors would definitely provide that. So we need to fix our staging, no doubt about that. So we can combine together these stages, right? So we've got this stage, but then we need to find the outside bottom stage. That's this one. That gets combined here. Okay, beautiful. So then we've got this one, and then we would need the bottom one here, which is this one. That would go right here. Perfect. Then next up, we've got this one, which I believe is this stage. Yes, that looks right. Then we've got this stage, which should be this stage. Yep. And then these two combine together. And then these two combine together. Like so. And in theory, that's the time... hang on. Something went kind of wrong here. These didn't combine together. Okay. In theory, that's the time we activate the hydrogen engine. Okay, so it's something like this. But I do want to get rid of these aerospikes. And we'll try it with full-on vectors. Nothing but vectors here. I want as much thrust as we can muster. So we're going to do something like this. We clearly need more thrust here. So let's just attach these guys here and like that. Cool. So all of these are going to get attached. We've got nothing but vectors and the Mammoth 2s. Now, if we could upgrade the Mammoth 2s to more vectors than 4, that would probably be worthwhile. But for now, let's put this out there and see how this goes. This is going to be interesting. I don't know if we'll have enough thrust to get off of the water, but we'll see. I'm going to activate this basically right away. Is this going out to the pad? No, it is not. Okay. I'm going to activate it basically right away while we're still up in the air. I do want to solve the sinking problem, and hopefully we'll get there soon. Okay, so let's teleport on out. And let's see what this looks like if we activate it right now. Okay. So that's noted. We're going to need to nose down a bit. Actually, this is a pretty decent attitude. We're actually nosing up here. We are in the air immediately. So that is good. We're trying to nose down. Our airspeed is not phenomenal right now. Our thrust to weight is not the best in the world. But it's definitely a significant improvement from the takeoff that we had before. Okay. We're just going to look to park it right around here. We need to use our... We can't go, like, straight up, because we need to use our wings to generate lift to help us get up here. And going straight up would get us the most amount of altitude, in theory. But we have to use our wings to generate lift. There's no real way around that. So let's see if our staging is good, and let's see how far this gets us. We can see we're already about 4 seconds from the apoapsis. If we were to cut our engines right now, we would still go up for a while. So that's a very good sign. We're just going to build up as much speed as we can at this like 45-degree angle. Remember, our overall goal is to make it up to at least like 20-ish kilometers, at which point we can kick in our hydrogen engine. In theory. Now, we're going into a polar orbit right now, which is definitely not ideal. There's no doubt about that. We're chilling at about 200 meters per second, and okay, get rid of the Mammoth 2s. Beautiful. And we can see our speed is still increasing at this moment. That's excellent. So these are going to burn down pretty quickly, and the question is, what kind of altitude are we going to get out of this? We'll see. Okay, we're going to ditch these two. That was definitely a little bit messy of a detachment, but nothing too bad. Relatively clean. We're about 10 seconds to apoapsis right now. 11 seconds to apoapsis. That is pushing up nicely. So far, so good. Okay. Ooh, that looked really funky. The way that those detached. We got it under control. It was a clean detachment, but it wasn't pretty. That's for sure. So we're chilling at about 300 meters per second right now, and still trying to push our way upwards here. We're 12 seconds to apoapsis at this point. At this point, I feel like our thrust might be a little too high, and we might be hitting some diminishing returns, actually. Because the faster we go, the more drag we experience, right? So we may end up hitting some diminishing returns. We may want to get these very inner ones changed over to aerospikes. So I think our thrust might be slightly too high at this point. That said, the question would be, would that wreck our takeoff process? And it might. So that is certainly noted. Okay, we're going to ditch these sets of vectors at this point. We're still accelerating. We're still pushing out that apoapsis. So this is definitely looking decent. This is our best attempt yet, by far. We're going to be having these burn for a while. I do see an oscillation picking up there in our roll. Not a huge fan of that. Okay. Gonna ditch these engines. Hopefully it doesn't break too much. Okay, I definitely don't like what we're seeing up here. Overheat. I'm gonna cut our throttle for a moment, because that overheat's an issue. Okay, resuming the burn. But look at this altitude. That altitude is good. That altitude is really good. We're going to keep on burning here. And yeah, I see this is pushing back up here. I'm definitely not a fan of the heat going on. I'm not sure what it is that's overheating. Is that our... That might be our Wanderer that's overheating. If so, that is noted. We're letting that continue to cool. And then we'll push back up again further. This is definitely high enough for our nuclear engine to take over. Thrust to weight is a little too high here, though. We can tell that from that heat. Okay, so we lost the Wanderer. That's understood. So heating up here is a problem. But I'm going to call that a successful test, because that was really quite successful. Yeah, we had the Wanderer burn off. Heat is an issue at this point, but look at that altitude. 36 kilometers. That is definitely high enough for this to take over, and we had another 600 meters per second here. I like it. That was really, really good. So we need to solve the heat problem on takeoff, but I think that this is a winner of a design at this point. We are really close to getting this thing up into orbit from a dead stop. That's a big deal. It is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to see what we can do about that. Just throttling down once we get up to that point is probably good enough. Most likely. Throttling down would probably do it. Another thing we could do, as I said before, is have these switch over to aerospikes. I'm not sure if I want to do that. The takeoff was really nice, but we'll do some testing on how we can solve that overheat problem in the next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.